Okay, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. I want to once again welcome in some new listeners. We've got a bunch more over the last few days. Thank you again for spreading the word. It's been really cool, once again, to see this thing grow, and I want to just keep watching this thing grow. It's been really fun, and I hope to help as many people as I possibly can. So let's get right into it today. Today, I want to talk about a topic that's probably a little sensitive. Some of you might not like this episode. Some of you might not want to hear this episode, but I got to talk about it because I think it's really important. And that is alcohol. Alcohol and social anxiety, really drugs and social anxiety, but alcohol, I'm picking on alcohol in particular because alcohol and social anxiety, well, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. If peanut butter and jelly could kill you, because that's the reality. The problem is that, alcohol is really, really good, unfortunately, at making anxiety go away. Any type of anxiety, but especially social anxiety. So there's a lot of motivation, there's a lot of incentive to want to drink because it will make you feel calmer. It will make you feel more relaxed. And the other reality is, especially if you're in college or you're younger, there can be a lot of pressure to drink, right? So if you're socially anxious, now you're worried, if I don't want to drink, but if I don't drink, people are going to judge me for that. People are going to think I'm weird. People will think I'm not cool enough, or whatever the case is. So then we feel like we have to drink just because we have to show people we're cool or something like that, right? So there's two main reasons why this is a problem. There's the practical reasons and the health reasons that it can cause you. And the second one is more of the psychological reasons. What this actually does to your ability to stand up for yourself, right? Because a lot of times we're doing a lot of this behavior because, again, we just want to fit in, which is really, we're folding right back into that same old problem, that same old looking for reassurance, looking for approval. I'm going to get to that at the end. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that anxiety and alcohol are a very bad mix. And they're a very bad mix because they mix so well. And that's just a reality. Because if you're a socially anxious person and you drink, you're going to feel better momentarily, but then you're going to feel a lot worse the next day. And not only are you going to feel worse the next day, this is going to drag out your social anxiety problem. Because the first issue I really want to tackle today that I think is the most important to understand, because I think some of the other issues you probably already know, right? Like obviously, yes, it could lead to alcohol problems and all this stuff. I'm going to get to that, but you probably already know that. The bigger issue here for me is that when we're dealing with social anxiety, what is our goal? We want to get rid of the fear, right? We want to get rid of the fear of socializing. The problem with this, and I dropped some research below, when you're trying to get rid of a fear, if you're using alcohol or benzos, which includes Xanax and other medications like that, when you're using a drug that reduces the fear, what happens is you don't actually learn to get rid of the fear. It's called fear extinction is the clinical term, is the fancy name. But basically, if you're using alcohol or Xanax or whatever, while you're in the state of what you would otherwise be in a state of fear, if you're using that to reduce the anxiety, and then you go and do the thing, so you go and socialize and it goes well, you don't actually learn anything from it. It's like your brain resets the next day. It's as if the social interaction and the exposure treatment and therapy was irrelevant. It doesn't work, right? The alcohol offsets all the work that you put in. So this, to me, is the real big problem with it. Obviously, again, the health problems are really, those are the bigger problems. But I think this is the problem that you may not realize, is that you may think to yourself, well, alcohol helps me. It helps me socialize. It helps me be funny. It helps me be interesting. And I don't doubt that that's true. It probably does in the moment open you up. But it doesn't translate to non-alcohol related times. And so what that leads to is that now you have to drink in order to keep up that personality or to keep up that ability, right? And obviously that creates a big problem because now you are dependent on the alcohol to feel any relief. So let's say you have even a social situation that really doesn't have much drinking involved. You might start thinking to yourself, not even thinking, this might just start happening biologically. You're going to get a cue in your brain that's going to say, hey, we might need a drink. We might need a drink to get through this. Let's just take a shot. Let's just take one shot before the dinner. I know it's not, people aren't really going to be drinking there, but let me just take this just to calm my nerves so I can go handle it. That is a very, very slippery slope. You want to be real careful that you can see how quickly that can turn into an alcohol use problem, right? And the evidence is very clear that people with social anxiety disorders, they do have higher rates of alcohol use problems. Now, this isn't always the case. I mean, some people with social anxiety don't drink at all. In fact, they avoid it for these reasons, but it can be very tempting. And so you have to realize that one, it's not even having the desired effect. It's not actually helping you. Yes, it might be helping you in that moment, but you're not learning it. Your brain cannot learn anything about itself, about the fear, about how to manage the fear. It can't learn anything because it's being dulled down by the alcohol or the benzos or whatever the else is that you're taking. So what is the purpose of it? The purpose of it is just in the moment. You're not going to learn anything. Now, I would say maybe there is one thing you could learn from it, if there's anything. And the one thing you could learn maybe from drinking and social anxiety is that what you come to realize usually is if you're able to socialize when you're drinking, which most people can, you learn that, oh, it isn't a me problem. It isn't that I don't know how to socialize, right? It's not like drinking gives you a skill. It doesn't give you an ability. All drinking does is reduce your fear. So what that should tell you is your problem isn't that you don't have the ability to socialize. And I've talked about this in past podcasts where with social anxiety, we convince ourselves that we're just bad at socializing. When the reality is we're just afraid to socialize. If you reduce the fear, you're fine, which means that all these things that you tell yourself, these ideas, these bigger messages that you're a loser, that you're awkward, that you're weird, they're all untrue. They're all untrue because the reality is if you were in a calm state, if you were relaxed, I don't know anyone who couldn't socialize if they were in a calm state, if they were relaxed, right? I mean, if you're around people you're comfortable with, you can conversate, you can talk. It's really not that big of a deal for most people, right? And so you have to realize that if there's anything to learn from it, it's just that the only problem is the fear, which means that, well, that's good though. Then we don't have to drink because you're not gaining like a magical, like a superpower from drinking. All it's doing is reducing the anxiety. So hey, if we can learn how to reduce the anxiety without the alcohol, wouldn't that be great? I think it would. And keep in mind, alcohol in general, this is across the board for anxiety and depression, increases anxiety and depression, right? We all know that feeling of waking up the next day, you drank too much, you feel like shit, and that anxiety starts to creep in, and that depression starts to creep in. Now you're more anxious, now you're dwelling, and now, and here's the other problem with alcohol is, you're more inhibited, you're more likely to do something maybe a little stupid, and then what happens, you go home, the next day you wake up, and now you're obsessing again. And here we are back in that rumination cycle of, why did I do that? That was really stupid. Or maybe you drink way too much. You can't remember anything. So now you're trying to fill in the gaps. You can't even remember what you did. So now you're worried it could be anything, right? So this is the other problem is it may help the anxiety in the moment, but then you go home and you torture yourself. So for two reasons. Number one, it doesn't help with what we call the fear extinction, which is getting rid of the fear, which is what we want. Right? Alcohol interferes with that because in order for you to gain fear extinction, in order for the fear to actually go away in your brain, you have to be in a state of some fear. When you do any kind of exposure therapy, you have to be in a state of some kind of fear. You can't, if you're doing it while you're relaxed, you're not learning anything. Your brain is not learning how to adapt and to adjust to a difficult situation. So number one, you're not learning anything. Number two, it exacerbates all the problems, all the rumination and all the obsessiveness. Okay. And then look, I don't have to go into the nitty gritty details about all the other problems with alcohol, but again, this can create a very bad habit for you. Okay. And you start doing this in college and you start, skipping classes or drinking just to get to class or to get through class. And what's going to happen when you have to get a job? Or maybe you are at a job and you're drinking before you get to work. Whatever the case is, it puts you at a very high risk to create some very bad habits. So I would be very careful about this. Now, The second thing, and this is more of the psychological reasons why I think you shouldn't drink, is because it's a little bit of a cop out, right? And I'm not saying that to insult you. I'm not saying your social anxiety isn't real. Of course, it's real, but the reality is you're not challenging yourself, and what you're telling yourself, I think subconsciously, is I don't know how to handle this. I don't know. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't get over it. I need, as I mentioned before, you start getting that feeling before a social interaction, like, man, I need a shot. Well, what's that telling you? I can't handle this. I can't do this. And look, sometimes that's very real. Sometimes anxiety can get that bad where it really feels like you can't handle it. So I'm not knocking you for that. I understand that. But I think what that means is that we have to adjust our expectations. And maybe we have to be more realistic about where we're at. If you need to drink before certain social situations, that maybe you're not ready to for those social situations. Maybe we got to pull it back. We got to start smaller. You're not ready for parties yet. That's okay. We can build up to that. Maybe you got to work on your ability to socialize in smaller gatherings, or even just be perceived, be looked at, just walk outside, right? Maybe you need to start smaller, work on that, and build your way up. And I know it's hard because when you have social anxiety, obviously, it's more likely you're going to be lonely. You don't have any friends. So any opportunity you get, maybe to go to a party, if you can muster the courage to go, you're going to want to go, and then you're going to want to drink because you want to make a good impression, and you want to feel comfortable. But I think that this really just creates more problems than it creates solutions for you. And I think the other psychological problem with this is that it doesn't allow you to, as the kids say, stand on your business, right? Isn't that what the kids say now? I don't know. But it doesn't allow you to really stick up for yourself, right? Imagine if your fear is that you want to drink in part because you don't want people to think you're a loser, right? So you're at a party, you don't want people to think you're weird. So you think, man, you feel that pressure, that peer pressure to drink. Well, that means that you still don't feel confident in your own decision making. You still don't feel confident in your own values. And I've talked about values a lot in this podcast because they're really important. When we're socially anxious, we put aside our values for other people's values because we're looking for their approval. Understandable. We want friends, we want to make connections. But as I mentioned before, you can't make real connections if you're putting your values aside to make these connections. Those relationships will never last, right? If you have to pretend to be a drinker to make friends with somebody, well, what's going to happen if you actually have a relationship with that person, and every time they want to hang out with you, they're going to pressure you into drinking? You want to get into that habit. Look, that happens, right? Sometimes that can happen. We can get caught up in the wrong crowd, but you have to be careful because this is also psychologically, what is this doing to you? It's putting you in that lower position, right? It's making you feel like you're down here and people are up there, and you can't speak what is true to you because you're more concerned with the approval. So you have to ask yourself, well, what would it be like if I was at a party and I didn't have a drink in my hand? Like, I didn't even pretend to have a drink in my hand. And someone made a comment like, you're not drinking? What kind of loser doesn't drink? That would be really uncomfortable. What could you withstand that? Could you stand up for yourself, or could you just let it slide off your shoulder? Could you roll with it? Could you make a joke with it? Because if this is a decision that you think is important for you and your life, you don't want other people to sway that. And this allowing people to sway that is further proof of that anxiety, that social fear. So it all plays into itself. And again, it's totally understandable. This is part of what social anxiety is, but it's important that you learn to stand up for your values. So I think this is the other problem, is that, a lot of times we're drinking in social situations just because we feel pressure. And if you're doing that, you're not really respecting yourself. And if you want to feel confident in yourself, you have to respect yourself first. You have to. You can't fake it, right? Your brain needs to feel like it's real. And it has to feel like the things that you're saying and the things that you want to do, that those things are in alignment. And when we know that we're lying to ourselves, we know that we're just doing what other people want because out of fear of rejection, that's what makes us feel small. That's what makes us feel weak. And that's hard to fight. We can't delude ourselves out of that. So I think it's really important you get your values in order. And if you know deep down, if you know that drinking alcohol is not good for you, it doesn't help you, and you're only doing it for other people. You got to stop doing it, not only for your health, but for your own self-confidence, for your own self-esteem, for your own self-image. You have to know that you're living in alignment with what you believe in. Otherwise, you're living in alignment with what other people believe in, which is what is creating these problems in the first place. That is what social anxiety is. So I understand this information may be hard for some of you to hear. Maybe some of you are struggling with alcohol. If that's the case, please go get help. Please make sure you get help for the alcohol as well as the social anxiety. I was looking, and unfortunately, there isn't a lot of research on both of these conditions together, even though it is known that they're common together. There isn't much research on treatment of both of them together. There's research on treatment of social anxiety. There's research on treatment of alcoholism or alcohol problems, but not the two of them together. So if you're struggling with alcohol and you're struggling with social anxiety, go get help for both. Go find someone who either can treat both, or find someone who specializes in alcohol treatment and find someone who specializes in social anxiety. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you guys found this information helpful today. Please send me any questions or concerns or comments or topics you would like me to cover, and I will try to get to them as quickly as I can. Otherwise, I will see you soon. Thanks again for listening.